On April 21st, 2023, a task that should have been completely routine aboard the drillship VALARIS DS-17 went horribly wrong. Today, we're opening up the case file on this tragedy. We're going to break down the official investigation report to understand how a whole series of safety failures cascaded, leading to the deaths of 2 crew members, and most importantly, what we can all learn from it.
You know, this single line from the official maritime report just cuts right to the bone. It's so stark, so chilling. It sums up a preventable accident in the coldest possible terms. So how on earth did it come to this?
Okay, so let's set the scene. The VALARIS DS-17 was docked in Las Palmas, Spain. It had been undergoing reactivation work and was getting ready to head out. And the job for that day? It really seemed like a simple, everyday task. Get a tank ready for cleaning.
The job fell to the second engineer and a motorman. All they had to do was open the access hatch to what's called a Bilge Water Tank, or BWT. But here's a really crucial detail you have to picture. This hatch wasn't just sitting out on an open deck. It was located down in a pump room about 1.5 meters below the main deck plates. To get to it, you had to climb down a vertical ladder into a tight, confined space. And this is just how fast it all went wrong. Around 1:18 in the afternoon, an electrician looks over and sees the second engineer struggling near the ladder. The motorman reaches out to help him, but then, in a split second, they both fall into the open tank. The alarm goes out immediately. Just a few minutes later, the rescue team arrives, and right away, they notice a strong smell of rotten eggs. By 1:50 p.m., less than 35 minutes after they fell, both men are pulled from the tank. But it was already too late.
The autopsy was absolutely clear. It wasn't the fall that killed them, it was gas poisoning. The technical term is anoxic anoxia, which basically means their bodies were starved of oxygen at a cellular level because they inhaled a toxic gas. That gas was almost certainly a sulfur compound pointing to an invisible killer that was lurking inside that tank.
That strong smell of rotten eggs? Well, for anyone in an industrial setting, that is the telltale sign of one of the most dangerous gases you can encounter, hydrogen sulfide, or H2S.
So what is this stuff? H2S is a colorless gas, but it's heavier than air, which is critical. It means it sinks and pools in low, unventilated spaces, exactly like the bottom of a tank. It gets created when bacteria breaks down organic stuff, like the oily water and sludge that was in that BWT. And it has a nickname, a knockdown gas. It gets that name for a truly terrifying reason. It can knock you unconscious, literally, almost instantly.
To really get a feel for how nasty this gas is, let's just look at the numbers. At only 10 parts per million, a tiny, tiny concentration, you've already hit the official short-term exposure limit. That's the absolute max you should be around for any 15-minute window.
Now, here's the really cruel trick that H2S plays on you. At 100 parts per million, a level considered immediately dangerous to your life, it actually paralyzes your olfactory nerves. That rotten egg smell, it just vanishes. So your body's own natural alarm system gets shut down right when the danger becomes critical. You might actually think the gas is gone, when in reality it's getting so much worse.
And this is exactly why they call it a knockdown gas. Get to concentrations over 700 parts per million, and it's basically game over. A person can take just 1 or 2 breaths, lose consciousness, and death follows in minutes. There's no time to think, no time to react, no time to get away.
So, you have to wonder, right? Was this a complete shock? A freak accident that nobody saw coming? Well, the investigation report is painfully clear on this point. The danger in this specific tank wasn't just known, it was documented again and again in the weeks right before the incident.
I mean, just look at this timeline. It reads like a trail of breadcrumbs leading straight to disaster. On March 30th, just 3 weeks earlier, another cleaning crew went into that same tank, their personal gas detectors screamed an alarm for H2S, and they got out of there fast. The job was stopped. Then, fast forward to the days right before the accident, and you see this email chain where the shipyard manager, in messages copied to the second engineer who died, is practically yelling about the H2S risk and the absolute need to ventilate for 24 hours before anyone goes near it. The warnings were clear, they were in writing, and they were recent.
And the science just backs all this up. After the incident, tests on what was inside the tank found a very high concentration of something called sulfate-reducing bacteria. Turns out, the mix of seawater and sludge that had been put in the tank was basically the perfect recipe for these little microbes to go to town and produce huge, deadly amounts of H2S gas. So this is the big question. right? If the hazard was known, if it was documented, why did 2 experienced crew members end up dead? This is where the story pivots, from a chemical hazard to a human systems failure. We're talking about the breakdown not of one safety rule, but of the entire system that was built to prevent this exact kind of thing from happening.
See, the company had a pretty robust permit-to-work system. On paper, it looks great. It's a multi-layered defense with lots of checks and balances. You have one person plan the job, a different person who has to independently verify all the safety measures are in place, and then a final authority to approve it. The entire point is to have multiple sets of eyes on any dangerous work.
But on April 21st, every single link in that safety chain just shattered. First, the second engineer was listed as the person verifying the safety of the job, but he was also the person doing the job. That's a massive conflict of interest. And snap, the first link is broken. Then, there was no formal job safety analysis on record. Snap, another link gone. The company's own rules said a gas detector was required, but there wasn't one there. Snap. Neither man was wearing a safety harness. This wasn't just one small oversight. It was a complete collapse of the procedure, which suggests a culture where maybe the rules felt more like guidelines, leaving the crew fatally exposed.
So after a tragedy like this, the most important thing is to learn from it, to build stronger defenses so it can never, ever happen again. And that's exactly what the company and the authorities focused on next.
The company's response was pretty thorough. Right away, they sent out safety alerts about H2S. They made it mandatory to use self-contained breathing apparatus, SCBA, anytime you're cracking open a potentially hazardous tank. Now this next one is huge. They required high-risk tanks to be fitted with external sample points. This lets you test the atmosphere before the hatch is even opened, taking the human out of that initial danger zone. And of course, they rolled out new training and updated their emergency drills.
So what are the big takeaways for all of us? First, safety procedures are completely worthless if they're not followed to the letter, every single time. Second, the physical layout of a job site is a huge safety factor. That cramped ladder access made a bad situation so much worse. And finally, maybe the biggest lesson of all, you have to assume the worst. Assume every confined space is deadly until you have proven, with calibrated equipment, that it is safe.
And this whole story leaves us with a final, really crucial question to think about. The incident on the VALARIS DS-17 wasn't just about one person making one bad call. It was about a known hazard with multiple documented warnings and a safety system that, on that particular day, failed on every single level. So it really forces you to ask, was this just an isolated mistake, or was it a tragic look at a system that was simply an accident waiting to happen?